here with us at Band of Vices. Absolutely an amazing space. I am Dr. Erica Miller, and seated next to me is my link sister, Dr. Bernadette Lucas, and she is going to introduce the owner and curator extraordinaire, Mr. Terrell Tilford.
Thank you so much, Dr. Miller. I could not be more excited or honored to introduce Mr. Terrell Tilford, who I've known for many years, and I could not be more excited about his space, about what he's done. So, Terrell, if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about yourself and how we got here, I would so appreciate it.
Sure. Well, let me say, contrary to Dr. Miller and Dr. Lucas, I am just Terrell. I don't have doctorate of anything. Except the streets, and we appreciate y'all tuning in. As always with Band of Vices, we keep it real. So first and foremost, I just want to say shout out to all of our people out there that decided to tune in this evening. We really appreciate y'all. We appreciate the time. I'm Terrell Tilford. I'm the creative director and the founder of Band of Vices. This is technically my second gallery and fourth exhibition space since 1999. My previous gallery was Tilford Art Group, and one of the smartest things I could have done when I rebranded the gallery in 2015, although my original crew at Tilford Art Group was strong, powerful, everything, I got an equally strong, powerful, smart, intelligent, and amazing crew behind Band of Vices at the same time. And a lot of people may ask, what is Band of Vices? And I don't have the most eloquent explanation that one of my partners recently came up with, but what I will say is that there was a time when it was wrong to be brown, it was out of pocket to be black, it was considered an abomination to have any physical incapabilities or challenges. To be on the quote-unquote wrong side of what sexual orientation is. And for us, all of that is the right side. All of that is, the inclusion, the equity, the validation, the ownership of who and whose we are. So anything that has to do with Band of Vices has to do with being on the wrong side of everything, but celebrating it in the joy of the visual arts and anything else that we decide to celebrate within what we call our sanctuary or our sacred space as well. So for somebody who's been in this particular game since '99, I just want to say thank you for continuing to rock with us. And if you're discovering us for the first time, we appreciate you. Jump on ship.
Well, what can we say? 1999, not just Prince.
Word.
So what? So individuals always hear about artists, Da Vinci, Picasso, but when blacks hear of art, they don't necessarily relate it to Jacob Lawrence, Ernie Barnes, Charles Bibbs, Sanford Biggers, Lisa Diane Wedgworth, Elizabeth Catlett, Barnett Honeywood, the list goes on.
Yes.
So help us understand exactly what is black art.
Black art from an African American, Afro-Caribbean, African, Black American, colored, Negro standpoint, for me, is actually the validation of who you see yourself as within the artwork that and we're just going to be comfortable here, like we're in a living room, exactly. but we're not. But really, what it is for me, it's really the identification for ourselves, of ourselves, for ourselves. So whatever that level of empowerment, whatever that level of, again, validation, whatever that level of seeing yourself, and I'm going to talk a lot about that this evening or whatever, but it's really about how you see yourself within the relationship of the work. Because while figurative work drapes and presents a very easygoing, completely easily identifiable standpoint, the abstract work, if you spend enough time with it, it too will show you of yourself and the inclusiveness of yourself within the work. So I always say that there's two different standpoints of it. There's that of a person in a black body, and then there's a person in a white body. Excuse me. And whatever their identification is, whether it's just because it's a black artist, if that's enough for them, then that's okay, and that is what it is.
One of the things I noticed in the depictions of the late Ernie Barnes and the late Barnett Honeywood was that they made sure to depict us in their artwork in a very vivid, surrealistic capacity. Can you explain why it is so important for us to collect black art as blacks in America?
Through our ancestral DNA and through that passage, there is so much that was lost, forgotten, annihilated, jeopardized, sacrificed, that the joy of those images reinforces our integrity, our humility, our defiance, and our resilience at the same time. So when you see those images of early Barney Honeywood or Ernie Barnes or something, and the really sort of ancestral figurative motions, the ancestral gestures, those are things that are inherent to our culture, and that's why they made such a powerful, powerful response at the same time, because we saw ourselves within those things, whether it was a juke joint or the other
Sugar Shack?
Yeah, Sugar Shacks, the clandestine, just whatever it was, because first and foremost, historically, we were not allowed in the other clubs.
Exactly.
We were not allowed in the other parties. Hell, we had to enter through the back of some shit at the same time. So when we see ourselves in that, it's like, oh man, I remember that. Like I remember growing up, and there would be these characters in my living room, Joe Willie and Sweet Lou and these other guys, and they'd be playing bid whist or spades or dominoes or something, and Bobby Blue Bland or Marvin Gaye or B.B. King is playing on the radio. So for me, when I see those images, it takes me back to like those home parties that my mother used to host, and it's just, they could be volatile, and they could be just pure, absolute, unadulterated joy at the same time.
Nice.
Definitely.
Nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
That really moved me. Earlier you talked about equity and inclusion, and your comments just now spoke to this notion of liberation, giving our dreams wings and depth and breadth. Could you talk a little bit about, in the context of that, what inspired you to open an art gallery featuring African American art, black art from people who that's been created by people of color?
I never had an intention on opening an art gallery. I've lived, a joyous part of my life as a professional actor for many years, and have been very grateful and blessed with that. And
y'all should recognize him from Soul.
that's just because I grew my hair out in the past 10 years.
Right.
This is called my COVID hair. It's called an experiment that kind of has done something. I wasn't sure. But I first started in my home hosting art shows after I moved back from New York the first time. And I did it because I wanted to help visual artists make a living and support visual artists in the same way that people were supporting me or my family as actors. Whether you came out to see our plays, in the old days, people used to write letters to the network, that sort of thing. So to me, this was a little bit of I don't know if it's a swan song or if it's just, a gesture that I go, you know what? I've been blessed in so many different ways. What can I do to help people that I had already been doing since I was 16 years old, but then had a newfound consciousness and awareness of it at the same time. So for me, it was going, you know what? Let me hold some art shows in my home, and let me help some artists that I love, that I've collected, that just have a good, humble heart, that I just have some sort of, really strong, compelling feeling toward, and actually get powder caked.
Yes.
It went from, this was the early days still of email. I think the first thing we sent out was snail mail. So literally I went from like 20 people to 80 people in a month, to then about 250 people with the next show, to literally after 8 months and 4 shows, there were like about 800 to 1,200 people coming through our home in a 4-week time period. And at the time, the home that we owned, it used, Nat King Cole used to live in. It was built in 1926. It had the original floors. So there was a lot of energy coming through there. And I was a little worried about my floors at the same time. But also what it was it was so much work, because what I was doing was, we were moving all the furniture out of our home into the driveway. So there were people that, those who knew us knew, but those who were like the looky-loos, or who just wanted, or may have seen us on TV or something, go, let me go just check out their house. So people would come in and they'd be like, hey, like the whole house is an art gallery. That's pretty dope. So where do you live? And I would say, very nearby.
Right, exactly.
Wasn't telling no lies, wasn't telling at all. So then after those 4 shows that really gave me a sort of like an elevated idea of the magnitude and the magnificence of people responding to something that I didn't know was a void that was out there, at the time I told my wife, I said, I said, this is the last show in the house. And that whole thing, and she says, well, what are you going to do after that? I said, well, what do you mean? And she goes, well, you've built a community now.
Exactly.
And she said, people are depending on you. And I was like, whoa, that's real pregnant. Hold on a minute. I was like, look, we help to support some people, but I'm not trying to take this on as responsibility necessarily. I didn't recognize it at the time. And then as I love to tell the story, a couple of days later, I'm thinking I'm clear and free, and this is December, and I'm about to roll into 2003, not thinking about, just going, it was a good year, we had some fun, a lot of people got paid, beautiful. Got a call from who I call the patron saintess of the arts, Ms. CCH Pounder, and she called me with that accent that I could never emulate, but she called and said, Terrell. And I was like, hi, CC. She's like, what are you doing? I was like, well, I'm at home, what's happening? And she's like, I'm opening a space on She was saying, I'm opening a space on Pico, and there's a space a couple doors down from me, and I want you to come and take a look at it. And I was like, why? And she told me, she was the first one that told me, she said, because you're going to open an art gallery. And I was like, you tripping. I was like, Cece, I'm not opening a commercial space at all. So we bickered back and forth for about 10 minutes. Come look at the space. Why should I come look at the space? Come look at the space. Fine, I'll come look at the space. So I came and looked at the space, and literally, I looked around. It was a dump. It was trashy. It was a mess. It was going to cost a lot of money. 20 minutes later, I was like, where's the lease?
Yes.
That's right.
And, from that was sort of what I call like another jump off. But it was a validation of, once again, first, if you build it, they will come.
Absolutely.
And number 2, people just responded in kind and in generosity, like, like this is a real thing now. And it became something, so from just that standpoint, it was crazy. But it was one of the greatest blessings that could have ever fulfilled a new direction, an elevated level of something that I had never really fully thought of.
Absolutely. And I remember going to that gallery. You and your wife did an amazing job with it. And I think when individuals walk into art galleries, we're in awe, we're amazed by the beautiful artwork that we see. But many individuals don't know how to start a collection. So what would you say to a novice person? How would you instruct them, or how would you advise them to start their own collection of Black art?
Well, let me say this. One of the reasons why I've opened all of these spaces, and it's been very intentional of where I've opened them. I've opened them in predominantly black and brown communities because, first and foremost, I didn't grow up with an art gallery in my neighborhood. This is the very neighborhood I grew up in, between Mid-City and West Adams. I mean, I went to Los Angeles High School. You can't get more LA than that, you know, and unless you want to fight somebody in Dorsey, and I love my Dorsey people as well. You know, right? But really what it was about was I want people who have not felt part of the conversation that live in the communities that we do, that when they walk down the street and they peek in the door and I say, come on in, that they know this is for them as well.
That's right.
That it's a profound thing to go, wow, there's an art gallery. One, I've had many people say, I don't know what an art gallery is.
Right.
I don't know how much it costs to get in. I don't know what to do when I get here.
Right.
And what's the protocol, what have you. And I said, come in, experience the work, and if you want to talk about it, we're here for it.
That's right.
And I'll get back to your question, but I'm going to explain something very quickly to you, that when I opened the space across the street, our original space here in West Adams, is that we had a barber, this Latino brother, Joaquin, I believe his name was, down the street. And one day he came in with his son, and we had these sculptures on the wall. And his son was about 4 or 5 years old. And his son ran right up and touched one of the pieces. And immediately the father, you know, recoiled, and then he sort of scolded the son. And I thought, and I said, no. I said, it's okay. I said, one, he didn't break nothing. I said, but two, he didn't know.
That's right.
You know, so I'm talking to his son, and one, I told the barber, I said, look, man, I know how it is when, you know, you're an independent contractor, whatever that means, and you're working, that whole thing. If you need 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, or whatever, I said, we got cameras in here. I said, I'll give you the code to that. Ain't no trick for me, or whatever. I said, if you want your son to hang out in the gallery, run around for a minute, it's cool. But what I told the kid, and this is what really sort of had the most indelible impression for me, is that I told him, I said, hey, you know, just so you know, you can't touch the work on the walls or whatever. I said, it's cool, now you know. I said, because we have oil on our hands.
That's right.
I said, so it can affect the artwork. I said, but guess what? If you come in here and you draw something, I said, guess what?
On the wall.
I'll put it on the wall. And I said, you know what? No one will be able to touch it.
That's right.
And to see his face light up in a way that he saw himself in this conversation, I was like, this is the further reason why we do it, so that we then begin to understand, and then again, as I said before, to be a part of it. So this kid can now grow up going, man, I could be an artist if I wanted to. I could draw something you never know. It might actually get on the wall.
Exactly.
You know. So I'm sorry, what was the original question? Because I just, you know, I get lost in my own.
That's a great telling, because I mean, think about how many times when we were in elementary school, preschool, kindergarten, whichever the level was, and we would be proud of the artwork, and we'd come home and our parents put on the refrigerator. To literally teach that lesson to Joaquin's son, to say your artwork will literally be framed and it will be respected by being on the wall. It's priceless. So, like, I was fortunate enough to be taught about black art and how to collect it from my late mother. And actually, she was with me when I bought my first art piece by Charles Bibbs. So, for a person who doesn't have that not so much relationship, but a person who just doesn't know, how do they begin to start their own black collection? Where do they, just not so much where do they go, but how do they figure out that this is the piece for them, or maybe not? Where do they begin?
Well, now that you know that there are spaces like us and Residency, and there's Dominique Gallery, and there are now a host of galleries throughout the U.S., and trust me, well before we ever arrived. So we have not reinvented the wheel in any kind of way. You know, there's been June Kelly, there's Gallery Mertis, there are galleries all throughout the world now, beautifully so. But what I tell people, I say, first and foremost, start with what you like. And secondly, start what you can afford.
Right.
You know, because, you know, there's a different relationship to posters, prints, giclées, original works, whether it's photography, sculpture, oil, acrylic, mixed media, conceptual art. There's so many different creations out there that I took and I said, first, just start with what you like, and then hopefully you find someone that you trust, that you can just talk to about the work. And what I tell a lot of people, particularly a lot of new collectors that come into the gallery or they call first or something, and this is something that I impart on my entire team, I say, listen, it's not about the transaction. The transaction will take care of itself when it's supposed to. It's about the relationship. So if you build a level of trust with someone, whether they're spending $150, $1,500, $15,000 with you, they want to know how you stand with the work. They want to have a sense of, yo, is this guy a snake oil salesman, or does he have my back?
Right.
Can I come in and talk to him about artwork, whether it's on our walls or someone else's walls? And I tell every collector that calls, I said, listen, you can call me from an artist studio, you can call me from another gallery, you can call me looking on Instagram or whatever, and they do, and I'll give my honest viewpoint, because again, it's not about the transaction. The universe, for me, will take care of that part. I don't think about the money. The money will take care of itself. What I'm more interested in is going, how can I help you build a viable collection for yourself that may have some legacy attached to it, that in time you can look back and go, you know what? I built a relationship with these people. They helped me build something that now we might want to open our own institution and our family name, or it may just be one or two pieces or something like that. But don't buy something that just matches your couch.
Yes,
Because you're going to have your artwork longer than you have the couch. So when somebody comes in and says, you know, I got this red couch, I go, pump the brakes. You know, I go, let's talk about what are your greater needs, wants, desires. You know, what's your goal in this? And then there's some people that come in and they're looking to buy specifically as an investment. And what I say, I like to keep it real. I say, look, while I like to think that the majority of artists or all of the artists that we work with will necessarily go up in value, I don't promise that, because it's just like the stock market.
Right.
You know, it can be promised to you on a silver platter in any kind of way, and you buy it and suddenly whatever happens or shifts in the market. So again, if you buy from the standpoint of what you like and what you can afford, then I like to think that you can live with those decisions greater than you can live with anything else. So no matter what happens after that, you know, that's what you got.
Nice, very nice.
Yeah.
So